Overwatch 2 Beta Phase 2 is starting to feel like a Star Wars sequel, Revenge of the Supports. While in Alpha they were really weak, or at least hard to play, now the buffs have really added up. Mercy's flexible movement leads to some surprising aggression, like in this Reddit clip. Aggro midair diving at enemy Pharah. We got Sparta Kick Zen, Batiste regenerative burst is nuts. Ana obviously has abilities to carry, we all knew that. And now on top of all that, Moira can survive anything, including ultimates, turning Genji's Dragon Blade into a pool noodle and Reinhardt's hammer into a squeak toy. Blizzard is certainly flipping the narrative of support power in Overwatch 2, but let's not forget, beta is beta, but are Blizzard going too far? In today's video, we'll review the new Moira rework specifically, but also the general direction of support in Overwatch 2 and what effect it's going to have on the entire game. Today's video sponsor is Tommy John. I'm super picky when it comes to my clothing. I want to be comfortable all the time. Loungewear especially, because as a gamer, I spend most of my time either at the PC or on the couch. Tommy John's loungewear is perfect for me because it is made of breathable fabric that keeps you cool, fits well, and doesn't restrict your motion. Feels like getting hugged by an angel. PC gaming especially, I don't want to wear anything that's going to restrict my range of motion. My aim is bad enough as it is. It's designed to look good, feel good, be breathable, and responsive to your motion. So there's never any snagging or pulling, and you can just move freely however you want. So for me, it's perfect for gaming, but also just going to sleep, which we all eventually do at some point. While other fabrics can sometimes be itchy and annoying, Tommy John's is smooth to the touch. So sliding right into bed, I fall asleep immediately. This is a super easy pickup, guys. Quality fabrics that will make you feel great. Why wait? Check it out today. Take our link in the description to head on over to Tommy John's and use our code YourOverwatch at checkout to get 20% off and free shipping. Now, with the amount of support kits and the power that is being added, I don't think you could say Overwatch 2 feels too much like a shooter. Because for one, simply just having strong healing in the game anyway makes the time to kill longer, the team fights last longer, and for the gameplay to have more of an attritional, long-term strategic feel as opposed to boom, headshot, win the game. Which was the case when they say buffed regenerative burst from Batiste. But now, Necrotic Orb is so strong that I think you could think of it this way, as a silence effect on the shooter aspect of the game. While it won't have any effect on ability-based characters, like let's say an enemy Mercy, mostly just wants to heal, but against damage-based characters, like an enemy Roadhog, what do? Characters that want to go in aggressively just get shut down entirely by this ability. Now, I'm still working out what I think, and I'm trying to be open-minded to what this could mean for the game, because in large part, I think this is what a lot of players were asking for. Things that will slow the game down, abilities you have to respect, so you can think about the engagement a bit longer rather than run in, smash your face into the keyboard, and frag the enemy faster, because that was the baseline level of the game up until about this point. First, let's talk about why this new version of Moira is OPAF. I've read some responses from players online, and some people don't seem to realize why it's so strong, because on paper you might think, well, we're losing some of the offense we had with Damage Orb, which is kind of true, but the way I'd explain it is without Damage Orb, you're losing some of the really easy damage, like tossing a bouncing Damage Orb in a room and killing something on accident, or just sort of vaguely building up ult from afar, or pressuring the backline without much effort. So yeah, you lose that aspect of it for sure, but you also gain an entire separate ability, which automatically just makes her a much better character no matter what it did. Because now you don't have the opportunity cost of deciding, do I offensive orb or heal? You can do both, which means you should be spamming healing orb all the time, doing way more healing than before, and just doing more things overall. But I anticipate, of course, them to tune back that aspect of it significantly, so I wouldn't look at it on paper too much. Surely they will tune this back. Now, envisioning a world after they walk it back, what's the nature of Enfeeble Orb and what makes it so strong? Well, one of the best shortcuts to getting good at Overwatch is understanding how to hold and take positioning and which positions matter. And if you can put a character, like let's say original version of Brig, which this new Moira with how much sustain it gives to the team is very similar to, and she can just hold that spot, forcing the enemy away, it doesn't really matter if she loses some offense numbers, because you can't be vacated from a position if you can't take any damage. Because remember, Moira has a combination of 2 forms of self-heal, lots of team heal, reliable, even albeit now low, easy-ish to land damage, that also lifesteals for her. With that being the case, unless the enemy can heal themselves or they're like a big tank, Moira wins against every squishy in the game now. Think of that. When you're only doing a quarter of your damage and Moira is self-healing with Grasp and her own healing orb, is there anything that can kill her in a 1v1? This means Moira can brazenly run at enemies because they will never have a chance to kill her if they get hit by Enfeeble Orb. Another example, a full charged Widow headshot does 300 damage at 100%. With Enfeeble, it will do 75. So even full charging twice, you'll only do 150. Meanwhile, in between the shots, she'll be self-healing. And of course, ultimates, she survives as well. Okay, we've made the point. This is the strongest single ability for support that we've ever seen, I think. Maybe Valk 1.0 is stronger, but this is close. This is like a good number 2. And I think Brig really only got actualized in Goats Comp, so I don't even rate her individually as high, but that's a debate for another day. Regardless, there's a very competitive list when it comes to the strongest support kit ever added to the game. Despite all of that, this is the point of the video where I go to make everyone mad, because a lot of support players might be upset when I sound like I don't like this change. Now everyone else will hate me for saying that I kind of like this change, assuming they tune back some of the other aspects of her kit. See, the thing that sucks about Moira is that if she just sort of vaguely positions, she has a bastion spray of uninteresting stats to throw at her team with the AoE healing, meaning that she wins often through attrition. And while Enfeeble Orb attached to a character with high mobility who can super jump her way aggressively to go get cleanups and just sort of brazenly attack the enemy, that is really strong. I think it's balanceable in theory. It's almost as if when a lot of players are sitting around wondering, man, Ana is an incredibly strong support in Overwatch 2. She like shuts down so many of the characters in the game. Rather than nerfing Ana further or rethinking what she does, they've instead added more and more supports to equal her power. And when it's all said and done, I'm okay with that. Why? Well, I think if one of the 3 roles isn't ability dominant, Overwatch 2 will just turn into a teamfight version of Valorant, where there isn't really access points for less mechanically skilled players who are outside of FPS backgrounds to shine. At the moment, we have a very hardcore, dedicated community who's played the game forever, and I feel like they're often biased a bit more towards the skillful aspects of the game. So we have so many content creators that really like the brawly, aggressive Giga tanks, making highlight reels on them. And while a lot of this, let's say, less flashy support power, it's not going to get the try-hard sweaties of our community excited, I think it really gives a access point for the strategy dominant players to have something to do in the game. This is something that I said when I first reviewed Overwatch 2, where at the time, think of so many support changes ago, right? Where the best supports were Lucio and Moira, basically because they could just run around and run away, and Moira could kind of duel things with a damage orb. That led to a lot of players' impression of the game to be very dumb. And while tank and damage players especially were having a great time, supports were having a bad time. Not just because of the power of the support role, but just because there isn't a way to think about the game and play more strategically rather than skillfully. So while it's terrifying to me to see team fights last so much longer in Overwatch 2 than we've ever seen before, thanks to Enfeeble, meaning that just the whole fight stalls out, on top of the fact that she has lots of healing too. So it's like, if you maximize Moira, it's like you give your team 2 extra lives because you can drain all the offense from the enemy with Enfeeble and then heal them all back up with a healing orb. It's like way too much on paper, but the reason why I like it is that it finally adds some texture to the game where you have to stop and think and outplay some cooldowns. I was actually saying explicitly this when I was reviewing Junker Queen, right? It feels bad to me that the game in Overwatch 2 prior to all these support buffs was kind of just about run at the enemy and smash your buttons as fast as you can and hit headshots. And that's it. When supports have OP abilities that mark some of the map and force you to think about whether you should go in or not, well, now there's at least a buffer in those moments where you just freely pop off and do whatever you want. And keep in mind, supports will remain as the key target to focus in a fight. That's not really changing. But now that they have big abilities, it starts to really give that MOBA feel to me, where in MOBA games, supports are very squishy, but highly skillful. And they don't typically have much offense to provide, but have the best-in-class utility buttons, which are going to shape the fight and really transform what the carries are able to do. And since the new tank role is essentially just a glorified damage role for the most part, it really requires supports to have something like that to interact with the game. Keep in mind as well, while we might feel like it's overpowered for there to be sleep, anti, and enfeeble orb that just like completely dominates the tank battle, what I assume the devs are thinking is that if there are more things like this from the support category, well then you might have a reason to pick a shield tank or ways to eat these abilities, because otherwise the game sort of just devolves down to whoever's Giga tank or carry DPS can just run in and get all the eliminations. That's who wins the game. Let me remind again, we are in beta, so I'd like this to be tuned by the time we hit October in a few months. And some of the ways I think that they can do that is compensate for the power of Enfeeble Orb. Try to take away some of the attritional stats she has and keep the things that feel skillful about the character. For example, I think the extra hop she gets out of Fade, giving her a lot of mobility options, is pretty cool, but AoE healing, probably we can tune those numbers back a bit. Possibly even something as drastic as like, if you use Enfeeble Orb, maybe it puts your heal orb on cooldown, giving you some trade-offs like you used to have if you should use one or the other. Because otherwise it's just like Moira feels like she does multiple things all the time. And now switch to just talk about the role in general. After they finished all of these big play opportunities for each support character, it feels like the role is becoming more complete. And we know there's another support coming. A big benefit we've already seen is queue times for tanks have gone down a lot as players try out the new changes and I think feel empowered in the role. Maybe, objectively speaking, support is way more value than the effort required from other roles. So what? I'm personally fine with there being a MOBA shooter balance to the game. And maybe this will come as a shock to a lot of players who were anticipating Overwatch 2 feeling way more shooter. I already think it's enough more shooter with just one tank, many of them being glorified DPS. This long list of support buffs that we've got just sort of evens out the balance scale a bit, the pendulum swinging a bit more in the other direction. But overall, I think you still have all of the same shooter carry plays to make. You just have to respect things like Discord Orb and Zenyatta Kick. And you'll have to outplay Weaken if you think you can just pounce a backline for free. There's a bit of a cooldown exchange game where you'll want to get the Moira to whiff that ability. And I think as long as the developers rebalance her to feel like she's vulnerable if she misses it, in the same way Ana feels very vulnerable if she doesn't land her abilities and you outplay her cooldowns, then I think we're in a good spot. I was kind of surprised when I didn't feel offended by Baptiste's immortality field in Overwatch 2. And the reason was because it's so much harder to set it up to be perfectly invulnerable behind lots of defense. There's only so much to go around. In the same way, I think you'll find that as strong as this can be, being a bit mindful as a shield or defensive style tank, eating Moira's big play, well, it doesn't carry as much as you think it would. And we have to ask ourselves, should the meta of the game only be about picking the most aggressive thing you can and getting eliminations faster, or should there be an aspect of the game where you counter pick the abilities in play and say, carry the game from the tank position, not by having the most insane Junker Queen mechanics and just running everything over, but maybe getting value out of your Rhine Shield or Diva's defense matrix to eat her orbs. Maybe I'm biased in this way because that's another area of the game that I felt just didn't have too much value overall. And I think some of the secret to get more defensive-minded tanks to have any value in the game is to have them to have a play to make defensively. People often forget that. They forget how the meta hierarchy of the game transforms around the crucial abilities. Oftentimes, making something you would assume isn't that useful, all of a sudden the key answer to the thing that you're struggling against. This matters a lot for the average level of play. So 99% of players. The top 1%, you start to worry about when the game becomes too ability dominant and these heroes that scale up with teamwork become too good. And then all of a sudden they're just playing a Moira 5v5 GOATS variant, essentially. Like, that is a realistic possibility. But what's worse? Having a completely dead role and horrible queue times for everyone playing the casual aspect of the game, or just yet another pro level balance problem that the devs have to figure out. Like, that there's going to be infinite of those. And I haven't had a chance to make this video yet, but ironically, I think the first quote-unquote unbalanced bad patch was way better than when they tried to patch the game, nerfing and changing a bunch of stuff. The second patch that the pros played on performed worse than the bad patch. The first tournament in the Overwatch League was amazing to me because there was a lot of strategies present. Then they tried to change a bunch of stuff, and, well, then there was clear outliers and a much more singular answer to the meta. All that goes to prove to me that Overwatch is a game where anything can be meta as they make changes to the game. And while they're only flirting and toying with the idea of a ban system, it would be much better if the high-level players had a different format like they do in most other esports, rather than balancing it for 500 players, making the game unfun for the rest of us 99%. That's no way to make the game successful. I love skillful aspects of the game. I love rewarding skill in the game, but the truth is, pure skill-based games alienate players. And I think it's cool that 2 of the 3 roles are mostly skill dominant, and we have 1 of the 3 roles be actually supportive in nature, which controls a lot of the teamwork power and tactics. Seems balanced to me, because the alternative is we have horrible queue times and the types of players that would like to play support just won't, as we've seen so far. You shouldn't have to be a grandmaster to enjoy the role. And remember, this is coming from the guy who was criticizing Overwatch 1 for its RPG team comp builder aspects that ruined the game in many ways. But I think they've already taken so many steps away from that with 5v5 that it's okay if those MMORPG aspects reside in 1 of the 3 roles. Well, guys, that's everything for today's video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And don't forget to check out Tommy John's. They've got the best loungewear in the business. Take our link in the description and use our code YourOverwatch at checkout to get 20% off and free shipping. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon on your way out. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.